And thinks the minimum wage is his weekly allowance from his parents.
Dr. Oz can't possibly understand what that is like. You know, he has 10 gigantic mansions.
A number of high-stakes debates were held Tuesday night, with the midterm elections now less than 2 weeks away.
Who's going to keep your kids safe? The former prosecutor with plans or the candidate with thoughts and prayers?
We need an Office of Safe Schools, like states like Florida have, to make sure that this is a top priority.
Their tax dollars are being used to fund abortions many, many, many states away.
You know why nothing changed the day after the Dobbs decision? It's because I'm the governor of the state of New York and he's not.
A bit of debate night in America there. You know, the podiums, they're a dead giveaway. Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Major Garrett, coming to you from our Washington, D.C. bureau. Thanks so much for joining us. So 13 days to go in the political world last night. Many eyes were on the Pennsylvania Senate debate because it was the one and only face-off between the candidates that Pennsylvania voters will get to see. Front and center in that debate, issues of the health of Democratic nominee John Fetterman. It has been in all the headlines after the debate. It's been talked about by other politicians both in and outside of Pennsylvania. And it's been noted by Fetterman's Republican nominee, Dr. Mehmet Oz. What really matters, of course, is how voters felt about the debate and if they believe Fetterman's recovery from a stroke is progressing or had any impact on their actual decision once they get to the ballot box, should they go there. My colleague Robert Costa spoke to some today to get some voter reaction.
I don't think he is fit for public office. I know he has health issues, and that's not a stereotype, but it does affect what he needs to do for the people.
If people have a problem with someone that has a disability, we all got disabilities. If that's your problem with someone, then you should put everybody out. I'm sure Oz got some kind of disability too.
He has a health issue, and that's not fair, I think, necessarily to criticize the man for that. He didn't compare to Oz, but Oz is also a TV personality.
Pennsylvania was just one of a number of states that had debates that happened Tuesday evening. The governors of both New York and Michigan also debated their Republican challengers in two races that are, experts say, shaping up to be much tighter than expected. For more on all of this, I am joined by two of my most excellent CBS News colleagues, political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns. She joins me here on the set. And congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is also here in our Washington, D.C. bureau. So, Caitlin, let me ask you, I've been talking to some people in Pennsylvania about that debate, and two things were constant in those conversations. One, it was a rough night for Fetterman, but we have to judge this not based on previous debates where there wasn't someone performing who is recovering from a stroke. You have to judge this one differently and use that as a context. And two, many people I talked to were curious why Fetterman's team didn't prepare him better for some of the issues that were raised in that debate, quite separate from his performance.
Well, I think that's really important to look at because, first of all, I think it's absolutely fair game to question a candidate's fitness for office, especially when they had a stroke. And there had been questions about how transparent the Fetterman campaign had been about his condition. But I also think that you have to look at the substance of what was said during the debate. And there were questions that remain for Fetterman, especially when he was asked to address his support, his former opposition to fracking. He didn't give a clear answer. And in some place like Pennsylvania, that is a very intimate issue, a personal issue, a very parochial issue for voters there. So I think there is a way to ask questions about his health, and he had the opportunity to show how he is doing now. And that was part of his campaign's strategy in terms of doing this debate, right? Wanting to say, this is, I'm here, I'm debating, I'm capable. Voters can assess that for themselves. That's not for us to do. But I think you also have to look at the substance of the debate. And he also, had the opportunity to score some points against Oz, especially on the issue of abortion.
So let's talk about that. I believe we have something from the debate itself that Dr. Oz said that has since been turned into a commercial somewhat rapidly by the Fetterman campaign. Can we run that?
This is who Dr. Oz wants in charge of women's health care decisions.
I want women, doctors, local political leaders, local political leaders.
Oz would let politicians like Doug Mastriano ban abortion without exceptions, even in cases of rape, incest, or life of the mother. Oz is too extreme for Pennsylvania.
I'm John Fetterman, and I approve this message.
Two observations on that, Caitlin. One, quick turnaround. Second, pivot from whatever the debate performance aftermath is to an abortion that Democrats have leaned into aggressively, not only in Pennsylvania, but in many other competitive states.
Exactly. And almost right after this happened, you could have imagined that this would be cut quickly into an ad, and this is all that Democrats were focused on, which shows that they didn't want the attention to be on the stubbles from Fetterman.
Nicole, I want to ask you about abortion in the context of the Georgia Senate race, which I know you've paid close attention to. There were some revelations today that may roil that campaign even further, and it's been one roiled by this issue already. Catch your audience up on some of that.
Yeah, so this is another woman who is now coming forward alleging that Herschel Walker actually, in this instance, drove her to an abortion clinic to get an abortion. She is being represented by attorney Gloria Allred out in Los Angeles, and she is just only being identified as Jane Doe. She spoke during a press conference earlier today about why she is coming forward now. Let's take a listen.
For anyone who believes I am coming forward because Herschel is running as a Republican candidate, that is simply not the case. I am a registered independent, and I voted for Donald Trump in both elections. I do not believe that Herschel is morally fit to be a U.S. Senator, and that is the reason why I am speaking up and providing proof.
To call Herschel Walker a hypocrite in her view because, again, of his pro-life stance. He has been very clear that he supports life, although he has softened his position on the issue a bit. Initially, he said that he was for some type of national abortion ban without exceptions, and then he has since, most recently in the debate that occurred in Georgia a couple weeks ago, said that he supports Georgia's fetal heartbeat bill, which does include some exceptions. So that being said, this woman said kind of when she heard his position and his stance, and also in light of other allegations by another woman who claims that Herschel Walker paid for her to have an abortion, she just felt that he is being very hypocritical on this issue. And so that's why she felt it was important for her to come forward, because as a candidate who is pro-life, in her words, as she said, she felt pressure to get this abortion. And so that's why she felt it was important to speak up. Now, Herschel Walker did say ahead of this press conference today with this woman that he believes that this is all foolishness. His campaign has since put out another statement reiterating that they think that this is foolishness, although they have not yet addressed the more specific allegations that this woman has made. But again, it just kind of goes to the core of Herschel Walker's truthfulness. And that is something that I asked him about when I was in Georgia, what he says to voters who question his truthfulness. And he told me just a week ago that he is trying to turn the page, that he has addressed these allegations, and that he is trying to move forward. But obviously, he can't move forward if he now has to deal with this new allegation. So again, we will see kind of how this all unfolds. Obviously, early voting is underway in Georgia, so many voters have already cast their ballots. But again, this is something that is coming less than 2 weeks before the midterms, where Walker is in a very tight race with Reverend Raphael Warnock, the incumbent Democratic senator.
So, Nicole, very quickly, since the audience heard this new accuser say providing proof, don't assess the validity of it, but because I don't want to put you in that position, but for the audience, what does the accuser mean when she says speaking up and providing proof?
Well, in terms of this press conference that was held a short time ago with reporters, her attorney, Gloria Allred, did provide what she says is evidence that this woman did, in fact, have a relationship with Herschel Walker. So she, for instance, showed reporters a hotel receipt from a time where this woman and Herschel Walker had stayed at a hotel together in Minnesota. She also provided cards that purported purported to have Herschel Walker's signature, as well as a photo of Herschel Walker and a recording of someone who sounds like him. So that is, kind of what evidence her attorney has put forward thus far. She would not, however, say how much Walker allegedly paid this woman to get an abortion, or, she wouldn't go into the details there. So there are still a lot of questions surrounding this case. But either way, it is now something that the Walker campaign has to deal with yet again, in the midst of this very tight contest with Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock. So, we know that Walker will continue to be on the trail, and I'm sure will continue to face questions on this front.
No doubt. Nicole, thank you. Caitlin, let's talk about crime, because you noticed that issue. We talked about it at this desk in the context of the Wisconsin Senate race. It came up in the New York governor's race. Kathy Hochul seeking to win that outright. And also, Lee Zeldin, her Republican nominee challenger, debated it last night. Let's take a quick listen. Do we have that?
I'm running to take back our streets and to support unapologetically our men and women in law enforcement. This is about all of us together, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, as New Yorkers, to make sure our streets are safe again.
I have worked hard to have real policies that are making a difference. And as you mentioned, that data is still being collected. But I did focus on bail reform in our budget. That's why the budget was 9 days late, because I insisted on common sense changes. But there is no crime-fighting plan if it doesn't include guns, illegal guns. And you refuse to talk about how we can do so much more. You didn't even show up for votes in Washington.
Caitlin, we have about a minute left. The contours of that debate and how you're seeing it playing out.
Yeah, and talking to Republicans this week, they believe that crime is going to be something that could possibly make the difference in this final stretch, and they are really honing in on that in these specific races. And when you talk about crime, you heard Kathy Hochul talk about what Democrats are trying to counter with, which is gun reforms. We actually haven't really heard much on that, but Republicans are making the argument that, look, it's not just about that. It's about people just not feeling safe, and we hear that from voters, and it has to do with, not only homicides, but carjackings, and Zeldin mentioned that in the debate as well. So this is something that Democrats know that they're vulnerable on and are trying to figure out a way to respond, and also trying to get away from a lot of the messaging that they had before. But this is certainly, we're hearing from campaigns and strategists and operatives that this is something that they think could make a difference in some of these tight races.
And it feels like there is some overhang from 2020 in the defund the police, even though no Democrat is really running on that in a competitive race.
Exactly, and especially in some of these federal offices, there's kind of little that they can actually do in that position. This has to do a lot with state and local governments, and we saw that in Wisconsin. But it's the overall kind of message that they believe feeds into and a way for them to attack Democrats.
And the underlying statistics, which poll after poll show us, is on the mind of lots of voters, not just in Wisconsin, New York, but nationwide. Caitlin Huey-Burns, Nicole Killian, thank you so very much. Republicans will tell you that they are hoping for a red wave on election night. We will talk to the vulnerable Democrat who chairs the DCCC next. You are streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
When weather turns extreme,
massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane,
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We are so excited, we just can't hide it.
CBS Mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Let's do it!
Let's go!
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Major Garrett. The chair of the DCCC, that's the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, for those keeping track at home, is locked in a tight House race in New York's Hudson Valley. Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney is facing off against GOP New York State Assemblyman Mike Lawler in the 17th District. The Cook Political Report, which keeps a very close eye on such things, recently moved this race from lean Democrat to toss-up. That happened on Monday, and that got a lot of people's attention. In response, this week, the DCCC announced it is spending more than $600,000 on a new ad buy in this district. For more on all of this, CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now. Ed, catch us up on this race. Is it one Republicans could claw away from the Democrats? It would be a big clawing.
It would be, and we should couch this by saying that in midterm cycles like this one, where the party out of power has a chance, you've seen competitive races before across New York's Hudson Valley, Long Island, central New York, and parts of New England. The problem for Democrats this time is Republicans may be on the verge of clawing back several districts that have fallen out of their hands over the last 2 or 3 cycles and may be able to get them back. And they are now targeting Sean Patrick Maloney in such a way, either just to taunt him because they have so much money to burn, or because they legitimately think things are shifting in that region that's south of Albany, north of New York City, that could come their way. There's a few reasons to check out this district. First, as you mentioned, Maloney runs the organization that essentially is responsible for electing House Democrats nationwide. Usually you pick somebody who's in a safe district and can spend the cycle helping everybody else, raise money, offer advice, travel, serve as a national voice box. You can't do that this year. Second, New York Democrats were trying to do something to make it easier for them to hold on to these seats in competitive years by the way they drew the map after the census. And they were trying, in essence, to take back 4 or 5 seats that had been competitive or had been Republican in the past. But a judge here in the state said, you're not going to get to do that. We're going to redraw the lines. And that's what caused, for example, the primary, literally right here in Manhattan earlier this summer, where you had 2 longtime Democrats have to face off because of the way the lines were drawn. Maloney moves into a new district. Some say he should have stayed in the district he'd represented before. We talked to him about that and the controversy it caused here in New York. We talked to him about the fact that millions of dollars are now being unloaded on him by Republicans earlier today. Take a listen. What do you make of a Republican super PAC unloading $4.5 million on him?
Well, they're up to about $9 million right now, and that's $9 million they're not spending against other Democrats who I'm trying to get elected. So if they're going to blow $9 million trying to beat me, that's $9 million they could have spent winning some races somewhere else. So I think they're bad at their jobs, is what I think. And I think they made a kind of anger-based, emotional decision to go after me, some sort of grudge match or some sort of ego contest. I'll let them explain why they can't focus their dollars better, because I'm going to win this election. And when I do, they're going to wish they had that $9 million back.
Is what you're facing right now in this district of your own making, and the decision to run in this district as opposed to the other one?
I think there's been some confusion about this. I didn't go anywhere. A Republican judge redrew the districts in New York, and my home was placed in the district I'm running in. I'm the only member of Congress who lives in the district as created, and I'm going to run where I live. Now, for folks who think it's easy for a gay guy with an interracial family to win a Trump district, and then on top of that, run in one where he doesn't live, I don't think you know anything about upstate New York. It's important to me to live among the people I represent. But you can't say I haven't had to earn it. My goodness, we had a primary, I won it 2-1. And now we've got a tough general election, just like I always have. And I'm going out and making my case. So what I think is okay is if you give voters a choice and you trust their judgment, and that's all I've ever asked. I'm going to put my name on a ballot, and we're going to let the voters decide.
You heard Maloney mention that he is gay and that he has black children. He also told the crowd there at this assisted living facility that we saw him speak at that he's now set to be a grandfather. And so, look, he makes the argument this is where he lives, this is where he should be running. There was a lot of district shopping that went on among New York Democrats that were displaced during the redistricting. His point is, I stayed right where I am. Others would argue he could have shifted to the other one because more of his district is in that district next door.
Right.
Bottom line, Major, we shouldn't have to spend time in the Northeast. This covering House or Senate campaigns, for that matter. This is a region that has become a Democratic stronghold. The only Republican in Congress right now from New England is Susan Collins, the senator from Maine. Republicans may have a chance to pick off a bunch of seats in Rhode Island, in Maine, in New Hampshire, and here in New York that they probably shouldn't have been able to get their hands on, and that just shows you how potentially things are shifting, again, in an off year for the party in power, and a sign of how powerful these economic and inflation and crime headwinds may be for Democrats to address.
We only have about 30 seconds, Ed, but I hear in your voice a prelude to election night, meaning as you and I are going to be in New York with our entire team, looking at these House races in New York, in Maine, in Rhode Island, also possibly in 2 districts in Virginia, they could be early suggestive signs of what's going to play out.
Absolutely. And that's the signal we're trying to send, is if you only have to net 5 seats, House Republicans do, you could get most of them in the Northeast, New England, and Virginia. And if that happens, it's a prelude to a huge night for Republicans. If they don't, it's a sign that they're looking probably at a smaller majority, or somehow they're doing what John Patrick Maloney thinks they're doing, and Democrats are holding on. Stay tuned.
Ed O'Keefe, as always, we thank you so very much. A former House Speaker has some harsh words at the thought of Donald Trump being the Republican Party's presidential nominee in 2024. That is next. You are streaming Red and Blue.
About it. Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening. I'm thinking about it.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely. As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, they are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Anybody not named Trump, I think, is so much more likely to win the White House for us. Why would we want to risk giving the nomination to somebody that we know? We haven't lost, my party hasn't lost this much this fast than we had with Trump. We lost the House, the Senate, and the White House in the span of 2 years. I don't want to repeat that. I want to win.
You may recognize that person, former House Speaker Paul Ryan, Republican, Wisconsin. He was also Mitt Romney's running mate. He also said in that interview, quote, anybody not named Trump, unquote, has the best chance of winning the White House in 2024. I want to bring back in CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns here with me at the big, shiny table. So Paul Ryan had, I think it's fair to say, and it's accurate to say, a tumultuous relationship with President Trump when he was Speaker of the House and trying to guide the president's agenda. They actually worked together, collaborated on the big tax cut and other things. So they got things done. But Paul Ryan, net does not believe that Donald Trump in the future is helpful to the Republican Party. And there was a part of me listening to that interview who thought, are you channeling Mitch McConnell that he can't say things like that? Because clearly Mitch McConnell has some issues here as well. Is this the establishment trying to use a phrase I used, was that O'Keefe, claw something back?
Yeah, I was going to say, this is spoken from someone who has the luxury of saying this out loud, and also seems to be very much enjoying his life outside of politics. But, you know, he has a point, which is that in 2020, Donald Trump lost. Republicans actually gained seats in the House. That's why the margin in the House is so small, and why Democrats are at risk of losing it this time around. So his point is, look, we put Donald Trump on the ballot, and he is a proven loser in the presidential sense, even while Republicans did pretty well in 2020, at least, even though they lost the Senate. A lot of Republicans blame Trump for that in Georgia. But I think the question remains about what the midterms will show us, right? Donald Trump has endorsed a ton of candidates this time around. Most of them are welcoming him to campaign for them still. If Republicans do very well, as they're expected to at least take over the House, does he claim credit for that? Or are there some Republicans who say, look, this was a time that you weren't on the ballot and we were able to make these gains?
Or if you hadn't endorsed as you did, our gains might have been larger.
Sure. That's another, right. I mean, that's another thing to consider, and especially if there are situations where the tickets are split, you know, governor versus senator. I think there are going to be a lot of data points to collect, and it's not clear, obviously, what the answer will be. But his influence, of course, if you look at Republican candidates, is still very much leading the Republican Party.
And that's a concern that Paul Ryan has, that it's an outsized influence, and it is sort of anti-historical looking at the actual track record. And Paul Ryan, again, channeling Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has said this once, if he's not said it 100 times, the key is you have to win to advance your agenda. Without winning, you can't advance. Caitlin Huey-Burns, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here. That does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And a reminder, I know you need it, if you want to watch previous episodes of this very fine program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. All you have to do is head to cbsnews.com/red and blue.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
When folks on the right talk about socialism, it's a boogeyman.
Socialists are always going to promise you free tuition, free healthcare, free everything, but they will never promise you freedom.
I think of socialism as government control.
Wealth is too concentrated at the top right now.
Providing for people the things that they need is actually